Hello chess friends and welcome to your Out of Chess channel and welcome to the most spectacular game of the round 4 of the US Chess Championship in 2024 that's going on now in the St. Louis Chess Club. We have here Fabiano Caruana against the world's youngest grandmaster of all times, Abhimanyu Mishra. Abhimanyu Mishra, of course, one of the most talented players in the world. He's part of the new wave of the beautiful chess players that are coming. But this game is showing that Abhimanyu is a great player, but the lack of experience, I think, is a huge problem now. Fabi is, of course, such a great player. He has such a great theoretical knowledge. He has great middle game strategies, but I think Fabi is really experienced. He knows when to attack. He knows when to defend. He knows when to maybe go into a drawish position. He knows when he has maybe a slight edge that he could maybe go for the game. So, in my opinion, the huge difference in experience is something that decided this game. So, really beautiful game, but with also mistakes and blunders that came afterwards in the endgame stage. So let's see now what happened with the white pieces. Here Fabi opened with move e4. Abhimanyu Mishra's response was e6, the French defense, d4, d5, knight to c3. We have now the classical variation and now the Steinitz variation after move knight to d7, knight to e2. Fabi connects now further the knight to the d4 square. The d4 is of course the cracking point in white camp, so that's why Abhimanyu Mishra continues the pressure against this backward pawn on d4, c3. Fabi connects now everything here in the center of the board. Knight to c6. Abhimanyu, of course, continues the pressure against the d4 square. Knight to f3 is, of course, a great move. You're controlling further the d4 square, but the issue about this sideline that Fabi chooses to play is that the problem about this setup is that you're standing in the way of your own light square bishop. Usually the light square bishop should be here, somewhere on d3, and then the light square bishop is controlling both diagonals. It becomes actually, in many of the French defenses, from white's perspective, the most powerful minor piece on the board. So knight to f3, great choice. You have a great grip around the square d4, but of course the downside is the lack of the activity of the light square bishop. Bishop to e7, g3. You see, Fabi has to now develop it in a different way. Casting, and now h4. Interesting line here by Fabi. When we see now the c3, d4, e5 structure, it of course tells you that you should attack the king side, but maybe later a little bit. Here Fabi went aggressively immediately into the game. Very interesting sideline, a very aggressive method, and with these moves you're attacking, but you're keeping, of course, also some weaknesses behind. So from this point on, the game becomes really interesting now for both sides. And here Abhimanyu plays a new novelty, a new move that we haven't seen so far. At least I'm not seeing games in the database. C takes d4. Nothing wrong about this move, because after c takes d4, still Abhimanyu Mishra has these opportunities after queen to b6 to put more pressure against his weakness on d4, and eventually he can also try f6 ideas to crack simply the position, because white has the space advantage and black doesn't like to battle against the spaces that white gains. So now there are many options also to battle against this d4 e5 structure that white built in the beginning. So Abhimanyu goes immediately with f6, which is great choice, immediately cracking the spaces. Here we have now e takes f6 and now bishop to b4. First of all, in between check, knight to c3, and now finally knight to f6. And you see, with this move, knight to f6, Abhimanyu Mishra at least liberated him for himself the light square bishop. The light square bishop in the French defense is many times a huge positional problem. You don't know where to go, and you see how Abhimanyu is also well prepared. He was fine now. A beautiful maneuver with the light square bishop. First of all, bishop to d7, kingside casting, bishop to e8, because too many pawns in the center here are on light square, so they're blocking out, of course, the activity of the light square bishop. Now Abhimanyu, after bishop to f4 and bishop to h5, found a beautiful way how to get this bishop into the game. Really interesting opening prep, and suddenly the worst minor piece of blacks becomes actually the most active minor piece on the board. Really beautiful preparation by the young US prodigy. So we have now after bishop to h5, queen to d3. Fabi gets out of this pin, doesn't want to tolerate here this light square activity. We have now bishop to d6 and now knight to e2. Good move here, I would say, by Fabiano Caruana. This move, I think, was very important because Fabiano realized that he could have some problems here. He advanced the pawn, of course, to h4, but now his position is not so stable, I would say, here around the square f4. in some lines that I've analyzed at home, for instance, after something like here, knight to e4 that Abhimanyu Mishra played, when I analyzed the game at home, I considered many sidelines. This wasn't playing the game, but I wanted to show you what was my idea. It was a bad idea, I have to mention immediately. If after potential rook from a to c1, if white would have played this line, if Fabiano, as I said, didn't play this line, I've analyzed immediately this idea for black, bishop to f4, knight to f4, and rook to f4. It seemed tempting to me immediately to sacrifice this rook here in order to maybe get into this kind of a line where you can endanger at least the king here. The king would be a little bit exposed. Maybe you can get a rook into the game. This is not good so far. This is not good immediately, but I thought about this idea. The engine liked here much better white's position, but I wanted to show you after knight to e4 that Abhimanyu Mishra played and queen to e3. Now Abhimanyu plays his first inaccuracy in the game. It's not such a huge problem, but he plays now the move queen to f6, and now you see the queen is standing in the way of the rook. Now this potential tactic with rook to f4 is not working. Previously in this line, in this stupid line that I've analyzed at home, previously this rook to f4 idea didn't work. But if you improve your position, if you include more pieces into the game, actually rook takes the knight on f4 actually is working. For instance, instead of this move queen to f6, I wanted to show you now interesting options. Here Abhimanyu Mishra should have played bishop to g4, keeping an eye here, keeping simply this bishop very active, and in a potential line after knight to e5. I'm telling you now about this move knight to e5 because it will be now actually Fabiano Caruana's main strategic idea. Now you can go bishop to e2, queen to e2. The queen is deflected now from the defense of the bishop, and now hit this bishop, and actually now it's working. That was the missed idea here, I think, by Abhimanyu Mishra, because after g takes f4, you can even play bishop to e5. Look at this, f takes e5. You pick up this one, bishop to e4, d takes e4. I just wanted to show you one bad line for white. White doesn't have to play the game like this, but in every other scenario, black is pretty solid. Also here after d takes e4, you cannot even go with a rook to e1 in order to grab this pawn, because black will simply continue with rook to f8, and then queen to e4, rook to f4, and suddenly the position is collapsing here for white. Maybe instead of this after move bishop to g4 and here rook to f4, you could maybe try here knight takes c6 first, which would be the more accurate way here for white. But still, believe me, here black is pretty solid. After queen to h4, bishop to e4, you pick up this one. Now this one is weak, and white has to always face some dashboard problems here. h2 very weak. So really interesting game here it would have been for sure. So although down the exchange, but with at least attacking chances. Here you don't have to even go aggressively. Here after move that I've suggested here, the move bishop to g4, you don't have to even go aggressively into the game. You can play even a calm h6. I'm telling you now about this h6 move because you want to keep your light square bishop still in the game. And if something attacks the bishop, you want to have at least some kind of an escape route to keep your bishop there and maybe connect it to the knight on e4. You don't have to even play a sharp game. You can play a calm game. But what you should not do is the move that Abhimanyu Mishra played, is the move queen to f6. Queen to f6, as I said, is standing now in front of the way of the rook, and now Fabi goes first of all with rook from a to d1, rook to e8. Now suddenly white is slightly better, and now Fabi found an interesting, a spectacular idea. The move that we have discussed earlier, but now it's a different story. Now Fabi has improved his position, and now knight to e5 is such a stunning idea. And you see how Fabi here in this game is such a great player. With this move, he opened really many tactical sequences here. This square e5 is now 3 times attacked by black's pieces, but actually this is good. Great protection already, because what should you do if you try here something like bishop to e5, d takes e5, knight to e5? You cannot go into this line because of f3. You can just prolong the game maybe with queen to b2, because then white couldn't take here the knight on e4, because then the knight on e2 is also hanging. But with g4 you're pretty solid here. And now although black gained many pawns for the lost minor piece, I would say still this completely lost here for black. Bishop on e4 will happen, queen to e4, then you have a weakness on e6. This knight is coming into the game on f4. I don't know, the king would be in danger than a light square, so not a good continuation here for for black. So that's why here, instead of this move bishop to e4, what should we do? That's the beauty about this move by Fabiano Caruana with the move knight to e5. You cannot get even out of this attack with knight to e7 because, as I said in this previous line that I've discussed with you, h6 would have been also a very important move that Abhimanyu Mishra could have played. And now with g4, look at this, bishop to g5 in some weird lines, maybe even the queen could be trapped. Or if you try maybe queen to e7, you don't want to maybe trade off the knight, but you're retreating with the queen, then still look at this, g4 is working, then f3, and suddenly white gets a space advantage and black's pieces are simply cramped. Now it's a different story. White has a dominant position, is controlling now the whole board. I would say strategically, game over here for black. So see, knight to e5, a brilliant idea, and Abhimanyu Mishra found actually a good choice here. He played bishop takes e2, queen to e2, but as I mentioned, the queen is now in front of the rook. Rook to f4 would have been maybe a powerful idea. Now Abhimanyu played knight to d4, and Fabi calculated everything here. Such a beautiful tactical sequence that happened here in the middle game stage. Rook takes d4. Here we have bishop takes e5, bishop takes e5, queen to e5, rook to b4 first by Fabi, attacking now the pawn. The rook has to protect, and now bishop takes e4, d takes e4, rook takes e4, and in this tactical mess, what actually happened, the material is equal, but Fabi has at least a strategic advantage. He has now created here, Abhimanyu Mishra, a weak isolated e-pawn here, and now it becomes of course an object of white's attack. Suddenly white has at least something. It was a pretty equal game, I would say, so far, and still it's not such a huge problem. I think if black now plays the game fully correctly here, I think this could be a drawish position. And here after queen to d5, Abhimanyu is saying, okay, I'll try to battle, I'll try to attack now the a2 pawn. Fabi covers it, of course, and now e5. Pretty solid so far, played by black. We have now queen to e3, b6, rook to e1. Now we have this really massive battery on the e-file. That's the weakness. That's, of course, an object of white's attack. We have now rook from f to e8. Now we have everything here connected on the around the square e5, and now the main tactical goal of white is, of course, to push the pawn on f4, and then if the position opens on the e-file, then the rooks could be hanging. So queen to e2 here by Fabi. He's not rushing with this f4 move. He first of all wants to secure his king. He wants, of course, first of all to improve the pieces. Queen to c5, king to h2, rook to d8, and now f4. Now comes this move, and now I would say the real fun starts. After move f4, obviously you cannot take because the rook is hanging. Abhimanyu Mishra tries an interesting idea with queen to c3. He's trying now to trap the queen with rook to d2. And Fabi, believe me or not, makes now a huge mistake with the move queen to g4. And this mistake is not like black is winning or something here, but actually now we have an equal game again. A better choice is to play simply rook to e3, and then after something like, I don't know, queen to d2, you can play king to h3, and this is pretty solid. After a couple of trades of queens, white will eventually grab the pawn on e5. I'm not saying, again, it's completely winning, but a pleasant game for white for sure. But what Fabi did, he played queen to g4, and now Abhimanyu Mishra missed a brutal drawish sequence. It's almost impossible to see. Maybe just for fun, if you like, you maybe pause the video and try to see now the drawish idea here for black. Black moves and makes a draw. It's such an epic idea, which unfortunately for the game Abhimanyu Mishra missed, but it was really epic what happened here. Try to see it. I'm not sure. I think 99% of players wouldn't even consider this move. It's such a great idea. As I said, Abhimanyu missed it. So what would you do now here with the black pieces? Okay, the drawish idea here is a beautiful h5. This is the way to go. Suddenly the queen gets deflected from the f4 square. For instance, you try queen to h5, then rook to d2 can happen. And actually, if you cover here, now finally this is working, because look at this. You cannot pick up, of course, here the rook on e7 because of the activity of the rook on 7th rank. But if you pick up now this rook on the 2nd rank, now queen to g3 is actually winning the game. Look at this. Now rook to e1, and it will be game over. what you could try is here, of course, queen to g5. You don't have to pick up the pawn on h5, but then with rook to d2, rook to e2, now queen to d3, and again, black has equalized. Black can go for a draw here, because you can even sacrifice temporarily the rook on e7, but now you pick up this one. Maybe if white steps back, then after a couple more moves, we would have a perpetual check, and this would lead into a draw. So h5, the drawish idea here for Abhimanyu Mishra, really interesting stuff here, for sure. But here, instead of this move h5, Abhimanyu played rook to e8, and he's now again pinned on the e file. He has again this tactical problems. Now Fabi finally connects. Now everything here, rook to e3, rook to e2, and now queen to h5. He gets all of this mess. Nothing can happen here. It's a different story now. We have now h6, a rook to e5. We have rook takes e5, f takes e5, and here Fabi has finally an extra pawn, and of course a much better endgame. We have now queen to c6, queen to g4, and now rook to f8. Again, not the optimal choice here by Abhimanyu Mishra. Abhimanyu tried here to somehow complicate things in order with this idea to activate his pieces further, but a better choice is simply to play a blockade here. Is trying is better here to somehow not allow this pawn to be pushed further, maybe get even the king closer somehow to the action. But still, of course, we have to say it, a much better position for white. But what he did, he tried to complicate things with the move rook to f8. Fabi pushes simply the pawn further. Again, he's trying to complicate things with rook to f1. Maybe again, better choice is just to admit your mistake and then again get a rook behind. But now after rook to f1, Fabi simplifies the game till the end. Great move here. Queen to e4, queen takes e4, rook to e4, and now rook to f8. You cannot even do something like this here. You cannot pick up the pawn because you're simply too slow. The king is far away from the action. It would be then a completely winning endgame. So you cannot even play here rook to king to f8 after the move rook to e4 that Fabi played. You cannot play king to f8 because then you get rook to rook to f4 here. Then you have to trade off the rooks here, and even if you try prevent maybe f5, we play simply h5, g takes h5, and f5 is of course a completely winning endgame here for white. White will simply go towards his pawns. Black can never, of course, pick up this one, because if you pick up then the pawn on f5, this pawn is marching. Game over again here for black. So after rook to e4, here Abhimanyu Mishra has to now again play a passive move. You see how bad it was to play rook to f8, rook to f1. Now you're playing rook to f8 again. He lost too many moves. Now Fabi has, of course, a great game. Simply includes, of course, the king into the attack. Gets, of course, the king closer. Rook to c4 again. Black could never, of course, trade off the rooks because of this extra pawn. And now a great move by Fabi, rook to c7. That's how we play chess, getting the rook on the 7th rank, and this is now game over simply here for black. But Abhimanyu is battling. Now he lost another pawn. Fabi takes the pawn but also protects this one, so messed up game here for black for sure. King to f8, again a new check. Here Fabi grabs another pawn, so the position is simply collapsing here. But Abhimanyu Mishra is trying to battle. Fabi goes for this one, simply pushes the pawn further. We have now king to f6, b5, rook to b4, and now a beautiful move here by Fabi. He allowed here Abhimanyu Mishra to take, but now after king takes h6 in this position, Abhimanyu Mishra, the young prodigy, resigns. So of course 3 extra pawns, 2 are connected here. These pawns are unstoppable. So I would say a fair resign here by Abhimanyu Mishra. So great, but I would say complicated game. Interesting middle game with this knight to e5, with this queen to f6, tiny little mistake that allowed Fabiano Caruana to have some kind of an attack. Really spectacular game, I would say. That's how you win chess games these days. You have to play almost a perfect game. We saw Fabi almost messed it up with this incredible endgame idea. So great game in the round 4 between Fabiano Caruana and Abhimanyu Mishra. So with this win, Fabiano Caruana is now in the lead. He is the only player who has now 2 wins in this first 4 rounds. Incredible game he played so far. I hope that you enjoyed this game. Really, I would say interesting performance here by these 2 top grandmasters. So, okay, if you want to see some other games that we have analyzed from this event, check out our coverage of a beautiful Hans Niemann game. And if you like this content, hit the subscribe button. See you soon with some more videos, and what do we say in the end? Chess is the best, of course.